Welcome back to Malta. This is already the third film in our walking series around this remarkable island. After two walks through Valletta, this time we're taking you somewhere with a completely different atmosphere. Quieter, more built of stone, and even more deeply rooted in history. If you enjoy calm, story-driven walks through places full of history, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and join us for the next routes as well. And as always, you can find the map for this walk along with the routes from our other videos on our website. The link is waiting for you in the description. Today we're heading to Mdina and Rabat, two neighboring towns that sit right next to each other, but tell slightly different parts of Malta's story. So let's begin another walk. We'll start in Mdina, the island's former capital, located in the central part of Malta on a hill just beside Rabat. It's a place you can easily reach by bus, taxi or rental car. And since Rabat lies literally next door, we'll simply continue the second part of our walk on foot. Mdina is one of those places that sets its own pace from the very first moment. For nearly 2000 years, it was Malta's political and administrative center. It began to lose its role as the capital after 1530, when the Knights of St. John shifted the island's main seat of power closer to the harbors, and later to the newly built city of Valletta. It was once called Città Notabile, the noble city, because for a long time this was where much of Malta's aristocracy and elite life were centered. Later, when Valletta rose beside the old capital, Mdina also came to be known as Città Vecchia, or the Old City, to distinguish it from the new center of power. Today it is most often called the Silent City. Not only because of the remarkable calm that fills the streets within its walls, but also because very few people live here and car traffic is heavily restricted. And all of that fits into an area of less than half a square mile. And we begin our walk exactly where Mdina immediately reveals its status, at the city's main gate. The gate we see today is not Mdina's original medieval entrance. The present one was built in 1724, during the rule of Grand Master Antonio Manuel de Villena, on a design by the French architect and engineer Charles-François de Mondion. As part of the 18th century rebuilding of the city, the old gate was sealed up. The new entrance was moved a few yards to the side, so that the approach to the former capital would serve not only as a defensive feature, but also as a grand and representative gateway to the city. And once we pass through the other side, it is worth taking a look at the inner facade of the gate as well. There we can see Saint Paul, Saint Publius and Saint Agatha, three figures deeply woven into Malta's religious and historical memory. Saint Paul is associated with the beginnings of Christianity on the island, after his ship was wrecked off the coast of Malta in the year 60 AD. Saint Publius, in turn, was the island's Roman governor, who, according to tradition, welcomed the apostle into his home, and was later recognized as the first bishop of Malta. And Saint Agatha was a Sicilian martyr who is said to have fought refugee on Malta during the persecutions of the 3rd century. That is why her cult remains especially strong to this day, particularly in Rabat. After passing through the gate, on the right, we come to the National Museum of Natural History, housed inside Palazzo Villena. The palace was commissioned in 1724 by Grand Master Antonio Manuel de Villena and designed by Charles-François de Mondion in the Parisian Baroque style, although it has been serving as a museum only since 1973. It is a fascinating place because, instead of telling the story of rulers or religious orders, it shows us a different side of Malta. Its rocks, fossils, birds, marine life, and the unique natural environment of the islands. Across from the gate, we see St. Peter's Monastery Museum, part of the Monastery of St. Peter, founded back in 1455. It is the oldest women's monastery in Malta, and it has remained on the same site for centuries. Since 2023, part of this once enclosed world has also been opened to visitors as a museum. It is a rare opportunity to see not only Mdina's historic walls and monuments, but also traces of the Benedictine nuns' daily life, including places connected with Blessed Maria Adeodata Pisani, a Maltese Benedictine nun who spent most of her life here at St. Peter's Monastery in Mdina and was beatified by Pope John Paul II in 2001. Right beside it is Herald's Loggia, where the town herald once announced new regulations, fees, and important decisions from the authorities. As we continue our walk, we turn right toward a small square, where we come to a very interesting building, now home to Mdina's local council. It was once the law courts of municipality, designed in the 18th century as part of Charles-François de Mondion's redevelopment of the entrance area of Mdina. From the start, the building was meant to reflect the city's importance. The facade is austere, yet still impressive, with a large entrance portal, a balcony above the door, and two allegorical figures representing mercy and justice. Today, the building houses the local council, but it still reminds us that Mdina was not only a city of palaces and churches, but also a place of real administration and law. From here, we continue to Piazza Tal-Arciskov, Archbishop's Square. Here we find a side entrance to St. Peter's Cathedral. And right beside it stands the Mdina Cathedral Museum, housed in the former seminary. Construction of the building began in 1733. The seminary opened in 1742, and it has served as a museum only since 1969. We'll start with the museum, and for good reason. It is the best place to begin your visit. This is also where you buy tickets for the cathedral, which we'll be visiting next. But just as importantly, the museum gives us a great introduction to what we are about to see inside the church. It helps us understand not only the cathedral itself, but also the wider religious and artistic history of Mdina. This is one reason why it is considered one of the most fascinating church museums in Europe. Its collection includes works and objects dating back as far as the 14th century. Among its greatest treasures is a collection of engravings by Albrecht Dürer, one of the most important outside Germany. The museum also holds rich collections of sacred art, silverwork and historical objects connected with the cathedral. All of this makes the museum much more than just an addition to the cathedral. It is an important part of the whole experience. After the museum, we move on to St. Paul's Cathedral itself, one of the most important churches in Malta. This is a church with a very long history. The earliest written references to a cathedral on the site date back to 1299. The building we see today, however, is a Baroque reconstruction, built after the Great Earthquake of 1693. Which struck both Sicily and Malta. What is interesting is how quickly the decision to rebuild was made. Within about a decade, a new cathedral had risen on the site of the destroyed church, designed by Lorenzo Gaffa, a Maltese architect, considered one of the most important creators of Baroque architecture on the islands, and the author of many churches in Malta and Gozo. From the outside, the cathedral is not overly ornate. The central section projects slightly forward. Above it rises a triangular pediment topped with a cross, and high above the city, the dome dominates the skyline. Above the entrance, you can see three coats of arms, those of the city of Mdina, Bishop David Coco Palmieri, and Grandmaster Ramon Pereyo Sirocaful. It is also worth noticing the two clocks on the facade. The one on the right shows the hours and minutes, while the one on the left does not tell time at all. It works as a calendar, showing the date and the month. In Malta, two different clocks on a church facade are not unusual. According to local tradition, they were meant to confuse the devil, so that he would never know exactly when Mass was about to begin. Inside, St. Paul's Cathedral makes a remarkable impression. The floor alone immediately draws attention, much like in the famous St. John's Co-Cathedral in Valletta. A large part of the interior is covered with marble tomb slabs and memorial stones. It is also worth looking out for one of the most interesting surviving elements from the earlier church, the wooden doors from 1535, which once led into the older cathedral and can now be seen at the entrance to the sacristy. And in the chapel of the Blessed Sacrament, it is worth pausing for a moment in front of the icon of the Virgin and Child, one of the most venerated images in the entire church. On Piazza San Paul, one building that really stands out is Casa Gorgion, one of the most unusual residences in Mdina. This neo-Gothic house was built in the late 19th century and designed by the Maltese architect Andrea Vassallo for Baron Giuseppe de Piro Gorgion. From the very beginning, it stood apart from the more classical buildings around the square. Its Gothic inspiration is easy to recognize: pointed windows and doorway, decorative tracery, slender pinnacles, and stone gargoyles that give the facade an almost theatrical fairy tale look. Above the building, there is also a coat of arms with the Latin motto, Gens Hospita Regum, meaning roughly, a family that hosts kings. It is a phrase that says a lot about the ambition and prestige of the people who lived here. When the house was first built, it caused quite a stir because its style contrasted so strongly with the rest of Mdina. Today, though, it is seen as one of the city's most distinctive and most photographed buildings. After a recent multi-year restoration, it reopened as a house museum, offering a glimpse into the world of the Maltese aristocracy and the lifestyle of the local elite at the end of the 19th century. From here, we continue along Trygg-Vilegnon, one of Mdina's main streets. The street takes its name from Nicolas Durand de Wignacourt, a knight of St. John who defended Mdina against the Turks in 1561. Along the way, we pass Cappella de San Rocco, the chapel of St. Roch, also known as the Church of Our Lady of the Light. The site has a long history, because before it stood even older chapel dedicated to the Holy Cross, already mentioned in 1398. A little further on we come to the Church of the Annunciation of Our Lady, the Carmelite Church of the Annunciation. The present church dates from the 17th century and was built together with the Carmelite convent, after the order received permission to establish itself within Mdina's walls for safety. It is considered one of the most interesting Baroque churches in Malta, and its facade is decorated with one of the finest corner statues on the island, created by Sigismondo di Mec. Further ahead, we reach Palazzo Falzon, one of the oldest and most distinctive houses in Mdina. The palace dates back to the early 13th century and stands on the site of an older fortified structure known as La Rocca, which existed here as far back as the Arab period. This is also where Malta's first Grand Master, Philippe Villiers de l'Isle-Adam, stayed briefly in 1531. Today the building is a museum house, but still gives a strong sense of how medieval and early modern Mdina was intertwined with the lives of its elite. And if you have a moment, this is also a good place to look a little higher, toward Gustav Café, the rooftop cafe above Palazzo Falzon. It is advertised as the highest cafe in Malta, and it is one of those places where it is worth pausing for a moment just to take in the view, because the panorama from here is truly beautiful. We end this part of the walk at Bastion Square, besides Mdina's massive defensive walls. This is where you can best see that Mdina was not only a quiet home for the elite, but also a true fortress, set high above the surrounding landscape and designed to control a huge part of the island. From that bastions, the view stretches across nearly 2/3 of Malta. And it is worth looking into the distance, because you may be able to spot Mosta with its distinctive dome. That is where the famous basilica stands, known for an extraordinary story from 1942. During the war, a bomb pierced the dome, fell into the church, and did not explode. Today, Mosta is remembered not only for its monumental rotunda, but also for that story, one that many Maltese people still see as a miracle. From the bastions, we continue along the walls and then through Mdina's narrow stone streets we make our way back toward the main gate. And this is a good place to remember that Mdina and Rabat were not always two separate towns. In Roman times, they formed one larger city, Melita. Only in the Middle Ages, when the fortified area was reduced for defensive reasons and the line of the walls was moved, did part of the old settlement end up outside the fortifications. That is how Rabat was born, right next to Mdina, but gradually developing its own identity, just beyond the walls of the former capital. Today we walk there ourselves, because Rabat begins almost immediately next door. On the way, it's worth noticing Casino Notabile, a small but very eye-catching building on the hill. It was built in the late 19th century as an exclusive club for the local elite of Mdina and Rabat. Its ornate, slightly theatrical architecture stands out right away and shows that even outside the walls of the old capital, places of prestige and social life were being created. The building was also known as Point de Vue, simply the viewpoint. And the name Notabile recalls Mdina's old title Città Notabile, or the noble city. We begin our visit to Rabat at St. Paul's Basilica. A place of special importance. It stands above the Grotto where, according to local tradition, the Apostle Paul stayed for 3 months after being shipwrecked off the coast of Malta around the year 60 AD. The church we see today is Baroque in style and was completed in 1683, replacing an earlier 16th century church. Today, the Basilica is one of the most important pilgrimage sites in Malta, and for centuries it has reminded visitors how deeply the story of St. Paul is woven into the history of the island. From here, we continue to Wignacourt Museum, because this is where the descent to St. Paul's Grotto begins today. The museum's name is no accident. It refers to Grandmaster Alain de Wignacourt, who in the early 17th century strongly supported devotion to St. Paul in Malta and ensured that a college of chaplains would care for the grotto day and night. Today the museum is housed in the former Baroque residence of those chaplains. The building was completed in 1749, but the story of this place goes back much further, reaching into the island's oldest traditions, connected with St. Paul's stay here. And the museum is worth seeing not only as the way to the grotto. On its upper floors, visitors can explore valuable collections of paintings, reliquaries, historic silver, maps, coins, and rare books, as well as an exceptional copy of the Shroud of Turin, regarded as one of the most precious objects in the entire collection. Among the exhibits are also works by artists such as Mattia Preti and Anton Fauvret. Only then do we head underground to one of the most revered places in Malta. According to local tradition, this grotto was where St. Paul found shelter during his stay on the island, which is why for centuries it has been seen as a symbol of the beginnings of Christianity in Malta. Interestingly, before the latter basilica and museum complex took shape, the grotto itself served as Rabat's first parish church. But the underground story of this place does not end there. Besides St. Paul's Grotto, there are also catacombs and hypogea linked to the old Roman necropolis, as well as World War II shelters, where the people of Rabat took refuge during air raids. This is where another important layer of Rabat's history becomes especially clear, because the whole area is known for its underground necropolis and catacombs. These were mainly burial sites created outside the walls of the ancient city of Melita, since Roman law did not allow the dead to be buried inside the city itself. There are many such places in Rabat, but the best known are St. Paul's Catacombs, the largest classical burial complex in Malta, and also the earliest and largest archaeological evidence of Christianity on the island. Some of the oldest and most intriguing are St. Agatha's Catacombs, where what moves visitors most is not only the necropolis itself, but also the art hidden beneath the ground. The crypt is decorated with remarkable 12th century frescoes, while the latter paintings from 1480 are attributed to Salvatore d'Antonio. The site also includes a maze of graves, rock-cut chambers, and agape tables, stone tables associated with ancient funerary mills. The oldest parts of this underground complex date back to the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD. This is exactly why places like these are worth seeing, because they are truly unique. Underground Roman history, early Christianity, and Malta's own local tradition all come together here. It is no accident that Maltese catacombs are sometimes considered among the most important Christian sites of this kind outside Rome. And this is where we bring our walk through Mdina and Rabat to an end. There are two neighboring worlds, one enclosed with the walls of the old capital, the other growing just beside it, in the shadow of Malta's early Christian history. If you enjoyed this walk, be sure to subscribe and join us on future routes as well. And as always, you can find a map for this and our other walks on our website. Thank you for walking with us, and we'll see you in the next video.